What's up, everybody? My name is Tristan Grimm, and welcome to Grimm Stories, a place where your imagination runs free with the terror that this world invokes. Today we have 14 real-life creepy stories from Reddit, from www.bustle.com. There's some interesting stories ahead, including one of my own. So I hope you guys are ready for this. Story number one. Who was that on the phone? I was alone in the house. An unexpected number called me, and I could hear the same TV show I was watching. I kept saying hello, and my voice would echo back. I thought it was just one of those broken calls, where you hear your mic feedback. But what happened next creeped me out. Right before I put down the call, I heard the voice whisper, "Goodbye, good night." I stared at the phone, confused of what happened. Then I said hello again. The static and the echo disappeared. It was quiet. Then suddenly, "Hi." I put down the phone, turned off the TV, and ran to bed. Number 2. The shape in the trees. I was up late one night watching TV alone in the living room when I was about 12. I heard my dog growling in the kitchen. Sometimes he does that when he sees something in the backyard. A cat, a squirrel, a plastic bag blowing in the wind, the moon, whatever. I decided to go and investigate. And I see him standing at the door with the hair on the back of his neck standing way the fuck up. Like the way I've only ever seen when he's about to get in a fight. Or wants to. So I creep over and look out. I see nothing. After watching for a minute or two, I figure there is probably a raccoon that's fucked off by now. So I open the door to let the dog out. He steps out a few feet and stops in front of me, looking towards the shed in the back corner of the yard. It's the middle of the night, and only the back porch light is on, which isn't enough light really to light up the whole yard. I look off towards the shed and scan around. Nothing. Then my eyes drift upwards towards the tree that hangs over the shed. Some dark, undefined shape was up in the tree. And the instant my eyes fixed on it, it quickly floats up like a wisp of smoke being blown away, and disappears into the backdrop of the night sky. No sound whatsoever. No flapping of the wings, not even the rustle of branches. My dog goes fucking mental and starts barking at it. He's still right in front of the door, so I reach around and grab his collar, yank him inside, and book it the fuck out of the kitchen. I try to wake my mom up, blabbering about some dark cloud in the tree, but she's fast asleep. To this day, I have no idea what it could have been. Number 3. There's someone in the house. I can't remember whether I've shared this story on Reddit before, but whatever, I'll retype it. I don't believe in the paranormal, but some shit went down at a place I used to live about a year ago and I still can't explain. It was a part of an old Victorian house that got split into 4 smaller apartments. Each apartment had a really high ceilings and its own laundry room. Our laundry room was the only one that had attic access, not like the usual pull down stairs or anything. We're talking a 3x3 square cut out of the ceiling held up by 2 long planks on the attic side that were nailed into it. Inside the attic there were 2 beams that were nailed alongside the outside hole to keep the square in place. In order to get in the attic, you would have to completely lift the square clear of the 2 beams and push or twist it to the side. A couple months after we moved in, we noticed the attic access was open, like perched crookedly across the runner beams. We figured someone went in there to inspect before we moved in and forgot to close it, and just took us a while to notice. We tried to close it, but couldn't do it on our own. We didn't have a ladder, and there was nothing besides the washer and the dryer to stand on, which didn't make us, or even our 6'3" downstairs neighbor tall enough to get it shut. So we had to pile boxes and a bunch of stuff to hold it still while our neighbor climbed precariously up and shut it. Fast forward a few months and I was out of the apartment hanging out at my boyfriend's place. I got a frantic call from my roommate saying she heard a whump noise and went to check it, and the attic was open again. She sent me a picture and it looked as if someone had pushed it up enough to clear the beams, then slide it back enough so that one of the beams that is held up when it was shut was angled out of the hole. Number 4. The Little Old Lady. I used to have sleep paralysis a lot as a kid. I still get it on occasion, but back then it was like once a month. I saw the old hag, aliens, shadowy figures, heard voices. Pretty much everything that can happen has happened to me. The worst one ever was when I woke up not able to breathe and seeing an old lady sitting on my chest, not moving, just staring at me and smiling. The feeling of being convinced that I was going to die has stuck with me 8 years later. Number 5. Short and shivery. Heard a tapping on my window at night. Next morning there was a handprint outside my window. I live on the 3rd floor of an apartment building. Number 6. The Hornet Spook Light. There's something called the Hornet Spook Light in Joplin, MO. It is a light that has been documented back to the early 1800s. It has been studied by the Army Corps of Engineers with no explanation. It is a spherical light that moves along the MO Oklahoma state line. It doesn't have any pattern, changes color, and sometimes splits or gets bigger or smaller. It appears to have some sort of intelligence as it interacts with people. So on to my story. My grandfather, who passed away before I was born, took my dad and his siblings to see it back in the 50s. There used to be a museum there. So my dad decided to take us on a road trip back in 1986 to see it. I was 2. I remember being out in this dark road and getting scared. My mom was pregnant with my sister at the time, and so she and my grandma, Dad's mom, took me back to the van, an old Dodge Caravan, the boxy ones with for those that remember. I was in my car seat in the middle seat, and my mom and my grandma were up front. All of a sudden, the back of the van was lit up with a bright light. My grandma and mom got real quiet as I turned around. The light danced and moved around behind the van. My mom obviously freaked out and got out of the van running. My grandma stayed in there with me watching it. It only stayed for a little bit and then went out. My dad and siblings came over at the commotion, but I honestly don't know if they ended up seeing it. There was also a time in high school when we saw it again. It rapidly moved up and down the road and got about 20 feet from us and went up in the air so much as 50 feet, I would guess. The funny thing is that when we stopped at the gas station and the truck stopped, the locals wouldn't give us any directions to it. My dad couldn't remember the way. We finally found some teenagers to help us, but they wouldn't take us all the way there. Weirdest and creepiest experience of my life. You can look it up. There is no explanation. Number 7. The Phantom Cigarette. It happened a couple of years ago. I woke up one morning. I had one of those bad dreams where you wake up in a rush and immediately sat up. This time it was different though. I had a cigarette in my mouth. I don't know how I got there. I accidentally breathed some smoke through my nose and started coughing, and I accidentally put my hand on my cigarette, burning it. Again, I had absolutely no idea why this happened. Worst part? I live alone. My doors and windows were locked, and I don't even smoke. Tried twice before that. That's it. It wasn't a dream because I got up and went to work as usual, although scared as hell. I kept the cigarette butt on my table. It was there for weeks afterwards. I threw it away eventually, so I can't provide pics of it. Number 8. Reincarnation. My girl was 4. We had just had the G-rated version of Where Babies Come From talk. She said, "Oh, I remember that from when I was in Grandma's tummy." I said, "No, honey, you were in my tummy, not Grandma's." She shook her head and smiled at me as if I was completely dense. "No, Mommy, I was in Grandma's tummy first. But then I choked and died, and Grandma almost died too. So I had to wait to come back in yours. 15 years ago, my mother almost died giving birth to a stillborn daughter. The baby had strangled in the cord when she dropped into the birth position. No one in my family has ever spoken of it since. My daughter's birth date is only 3 days different from my dead sister's." Number 9. Still as can be. A friend and I were getting ready to go pick up dinner at night. As we were walking down my driveway, we see a car parked at the end. Unsure who it was and why they were outside my house. I walked down and peered through the window. Inside is a well-dressed man and woman. They're looking straight ahead, no expression. I tap on the window and try to talk to them, but they remain motionless. Still staring forward, I go back inside with my friend and call my parents and ask what to do. I go back outside to get a plate number, and they're gone. Never saw them again. Number 10. The Other You. I made eye contact with my doppelganger when I was getting onto the train, and she was exiting. No words were exchanged, but I really can't describe the deeply unnerving and frightening feeling that occurred. You would think that maybe it'd be kind of funny or neat or whatever when you see the other you, but no, creepy as fuck. Number 11. The Other Me. Not really as creepy as everyone else's, but a few years ago I moved to a different part of town. Not that far, but far enough to start getting a new set of stores, restaurants, etc. I started noticing more and more places I went, everyone kept recognizing me and calling me Dan, which isn't my name. Like at the restaurants at first, the servers didn't take my order. They brought me some random dish and told me, "Here's your usual." I might have a long-lost twin I might not have known of. Number 12. Horror movie, IRL. Finished an awesome summer day with friends at Paramount Cargo Inns. Leave at midnight in friend's crummy SUV. None of us have a permit that allows us to drive after 8 p.m. Shit. I'm sitting in the driver's seat, still damp from the water rides. Radio's off, friends are asleep. No one else is on the road. Nervous as shit. Fuck. I'm not supposed to be driving right now. Let alone without someone with no license. Go the speed limit. Make sure there's no reason for a cop to pull you over. Notice only headlights on the road approaching. Fuck. He's driving kinda fast. Hope he's not a cop. Holy shit, he might hit us. Fuck, he's right on my ass. Can see the individual hairs from my friends illuminating in the headlights because the sky was so close. It wakes up everybody. This guy's revving the engine behind me. Fuck, this might be a situation. Everyone is now fully awake, staring wide-eyed at the guy in the back. Suddenly the car swings around, passes us in a flash. Phew, he's got other plans. I think it's over. No. Taillights got bright in the distance. He pulled off to the side of the road. Shit. We blaze by him. He gets back on the road. Now he maintains his distance. Crap. We're in the middle of nowhere, and there's no one on the road. Luckily, a rest stop sign looms ahead. Hopefully, we can make it. We do. We pull in. So does he. Number 13. The Ghost in the Mirror. I used to visit my friend at her house in a rural farming area before she moved. I slept over a lot and we just hang out and draw. I usually slept in the living room on the couch. There were 2 mirrors in the room fairly close to the TV. When the TV was off and I walked by, I started seeing shadows move behind me. I thought it was a warped TV screen or something. Then, one evening, I walked into the living room to get my sketchbook so I could sketch in her bedroom. I bent over to pick it up, stood up straight, and looked in the mirror. There was a man behind me. A man standing in the hallway leading to the living room. He was average height, bald, and a bit old. I turned to look at him and no one was there. Turned to look at the mirror and he was gone. I felt a little spooked. Number 14. The campsite. I'm a bit late, but here's something I have posted everywhere else. This story takes place in August of 2013 in the mountains of southern Oregon. I'm a United States Air Force Security Forces airman, military policeman. My girlfriend was at work, and as a sweltering hot day began to turn into thunderstorms, my buddy Nick and I decided to go explore some back roads and get out of the heat in town. Southern Oregon is crisscrossed with logging roads and some actively used and many totally forgotten and grown over. Nick and I spent many of our days starting on roads that we knew, finding roads that we didn't know, driving for hours into the mountains, eventually navigating back to the paved roads. On this particular day, the storm clouds building over the mountains, we set off on a road we had never been on and began to drive into the mountains. After driving around for an hour, we hadn't seen or heard any signs of other people in the woods. We rounded a bend in the thick fir woods and emerged in a meadow that was totally surrounded by thick aspen groves. The meadow was perfectly flat and eerily still. We both noticed the strange stillness almost immediately. No birds, hardly any insect noise, no squirrels, and certainly no other people. On the far side of the meadow, right at the edge of the tree line, there was a picnic table. The table was very odd, however. It was painted bright orange and was much larger than a typical picnic table. Remarking on this, Nick drove through the meadow to get a closer look. I remember being apprehensive as we approached. The whole scenario was exceptionally strange. The overall silence of the aspen grove was unsettling. Although it was nearly impossible to see far into the trees as the aspens grew extremely close together, we parked by the table, I hopped out of the passenger seat of the truck and checked it out. I'm not very tall, only 5'5". Regardless, the table was ridiculously oversized and practically unusable. The seats were nearly at chest level, and I would have had to climb to even sit on them. As I looked at the table, Nick called me over to the truck, and I noticed he was looking back into the aspens. At first I could not see what he was looking at, but then I noticed a splash of colors that was completely out of place in the thick trees. A small, one-man tent was set back in the trees, about 50 feet from the strange table. I had an initial feeling of dread, and felt certain that there was someone in the tent. If we could see the tent, they could see us. There was no campgrounds in this area, no people, no main road for miles. Surely someone camping so remotely would be, at the very least, a strange person. However, as we observed the tent, we did not see any movement or hear any sounds coming from it. Nick suggested I called out. I didn't want to, but I said, "Hey! Anyone there?" I yelled. No reply. Feeling completely on edge, Nick and I thought about driving away and leaving the strange area. But we began to fear the worst. What if there was a body in the tent? What if someone got kidnapped? Foolish, I knew, but we thought it all the same. After some debate, we decided to have Nick turn the truck around and drive away from the camp. Should we need to leave in a hurry, and he would be waiting behind the wheel. With my heart pounding, I started walking through the trees towards the tent. I was totally keyed up with all my senses on full alert. When I reached the campsite, several things struck me as odd. Backpacks were scattered all over, no fire had been built, no wood collected. The tent was literally full of backpacks and women's clothing. Full of dread, I turned back to leave and tell Nick what I'd seen. As I left, I heard Nick start yelling, "Let's go! Let's get the fuck out of here!" Not knowing why he's yelling, I sprinted back to the truck. I broke out of the trees and saw a beat-up old Ford Taurus on the road, blocking us from leaving the meadow. I immediately leapt up from the passenger seat and Nick floored the gas pedal. The car was occupied by 2 men and a third person laying against the window in the back. As we drove across the meadow, the driver attempted attempted to block us from the road, but Nick drove around them and accelerated the way we had come from. I looked back at the car and attempting to turn around on the narrow road. Nick drove like a madman. I thought I was honestly terrified that they would catch up. We hit the highway without seeing the car again. I still don't know if the person in the back was male or female. I called the state police and they promised to send a trooper out to check the scene out. However, I received a call from the next day from a trooper stating that the campsite, the backpacks, and the woman's clothing were all gone, though he could tell people had been in the area. The strange table was still in the thick aspen grove. I have not returned to the area, and I do not intend to. Number 15. The Devil's Journal. A couple weeks ago, I was out in the backyard playing with my husky, and suddenly I realized there was a journal in the far corner. I don't really know how I came to the realization. I was just throwing the ball completely in the opposite direction, and I just realized there's something behind me. But I didn't make too much of a big fuss of it. I just thought my girlfriend had left one of her journals in the yard. She likes to write and draw a lot with them. 30 minutes pass by. I'm sitting here playing with the husky, and I get the feeling again. I need to go and look at this journal. It's a strange feeling, a feeling that you don't understand until you've looked at something with such curiosity that you can't help but touch it. You can't help but want to see more. Like a magic act, or a video game, or wanting to get a video game after you see this kick-ass trailer. You just need to go for it. You need to get it. So I went and got it. I flipped through, and most of it's just jumbled nonsense. Basically, it was a journal of a madman. I believed it to be my next-door neighbor's journal. He'd recently committed suicide by slashing his body up. It was incredible. It was as if someone ripped him apart, but the weapon used to do the dirty deed was covered in only his fingerprints. How could someone mutilate themselves like that? I don't know. But at the same time, I just couldn't understand whether or not it was his. I've continued to look at it and study it, and at the same time, strange things have been happening. 1 a.m., if the bathroom downstairs door is left open, a black figure will emerge. It will creep slowly up the stairs and follow into someone's room, enter their closet, and disappear. After it disappears from my girlfriend's closet, it goes to her mother's, leaving the room and walking into her sister's room, going into the closet. From there, we assume it leads into the stepfather's room, but we cannot be for certain, as no one's really allowed there and no one really stays there. Now, just to give you some clarification, Daisy's mom, my girlfriend's mom, and the stepfather do not sleep in the same room. So, just to clarify that, if there was any confusion. A couple things have also been going missing. My lighters, especially when I'm going out to have a smoke. My lighters will disappear on me and reappear in the most ridiculous places. Behind the toilet, in one of the shoes in the closet, up in the attic, which is also where we found our Ouija board we bought from Barnes & Noble a couple times. Since I found the journal, we've tried to do a contact with it. I don't know what will occur next, and I will keep you guys constantly posted and updated. Well, you guys, that was 15 stories from Reddit. One of them was actually a personal story of mine that I posted. And, I may have, edged it up a bit, but can you tell which one it was? Ask in the comments section below, and click on click on the Twitter link in the description below. and you guys will get a link to a post in which I give out the answer. So be sure to follow me to find out what the answer is, you guys. And until the next episode, be wary of the darkness drifting behind your shoulder.